three out of four perpetrators were known to the victims. 3 out of 4 perpetrators were known to the victims, family, friends, uncles, whatever. So it's not the strangers who are doing this. It is not, and that makes the problem even more compounded. And in particular, one of the findings of that report was that fathers, stepfathers, and father figures are responsible for over 67% of family-related sexual violence. And that goes right back to the family itself.
Yes,
Yes, Danuta.
just yeah, just following from what you said. I mean, and I think that we have to recognize that in Guyana, we have a very high tolerance for domestic violence, sexual violence, and other forms of violence. And until we can actually change that tolerance, that attitude, which allows us to look the other way, the cases that were, the case that was mentioned about the girl, who, I mean, there were a number of people who would have known what went on. Who intervened? Was there any intervention? And if one failed, did it continue? Because in daily life, you go around, you know, you're just moving ahead in your life. You see these things happening all the time. You walk down the road, there's some um, mother or, you know, maybe dragging the child, beating the child because she's stressed out or whatever. But we really have a high tolerance. There is a rape culture in Guyana that we have to tackle. We have to know what it is. Um, and because unless you understand what it is, you don't know how to fight against it. There are a lot of rape myths that continue to operate in this country, and unfortunately also affects our service providers, including the police, and including sometimes people in the health sector. You know, so it's sometimes we say that there's a lot of awareness being done, but there are huge gaps in awareness. And even if we're creating the awareness, are we changing the actual attitudes, right? And my last point is that when in dealing with issues of sexual violence and domestic violence, we also have to understand gender and what gender means and gender roles and responsibilities. Because domestic violence is about gender. That is what it is about, right? This, and I just want to make this point because throughout the world, you know, the Secretary General of the United Nations, they did a study, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. And in every country, there is domestic violence, which is one of the forms of gender-based violence. Sexual violence is also another form of gender-based violence. So throughout this world, this is happening. In the United States of America, their statistics is 1 out of 3 women are affected by domestic violence. Ours are equivalent or even higher. But this happens throughout the world. What we know about it also is that it affects women. Predominantly, 90-something% of persons who experience domestic violence are women. Why is that so? And unless we can understand the way society has determined the roles of women and men, right? Unless we understand that, unless we understand ourselves in our daily interactions, how we are also influenced by being socialized in that way, you know, we really are not moving to really understand, um, you know, the roots of these things. And they are deeply embedded in us. They're also deeply embedded in women who have, you know, it is something like racism. It is deeply, deeply embedded until some people think, but I am not like that. But if you examine some of your attitudes and how you respond to things, as you say about the cyberbullying and all of that, you know, um, and that is a big issue because they have something now called digital violence, which is like a form of domestic violence because it's increasing. So I just wanted to make those points.
I wanted to ask you a question and throw it out to everybody. You talked about the attitudes. We know that education has been put forward as one way of changing attitudes. Is that in itself going to be enough? If not, what else can be done? But before you answer, I want to make this point. I've been quoting from our documents because I wanted you to understand that those documents, a lot of people were talking about doing the research and having the information. And because I said that's not what we're focusing on, I think somebody thought that I'm dismissing it. I'm not. The information is there. My appeal to you is when you go home, look at those documents. They give you a starting point. And from there, if you need more information, you can go on to do your own research and then let it snowball. We never came to this conference thinking that we were going to dismiss the statistics. We just didn't want that to be the focus. The information is there. The basic statistics for all four of the sets of issues we're discussing there are there. Whatever is available, comprehensive information is not available. One of the huge problem Guyana has is lack of research and statistics. But whatever is available, we've got it there. So having that said that, I'd ask the Nuta and anybody else, besides education, how else do we change attitudes?
Point. Couple of things. They did a domestic abuse program about 4 years ago where they brought in, they spent about 4 million US. And in that study, they were saying that a high percentage of women think that if a man doesn't hit them, he doesn't love them. You remember that? It was right. It was kind of weird. The other point, you know, when I said respect, I think mindfulness. If we remain mindful about things in our environment, things that we see, things that we hear, and be cognizant of what's going on, I think we could be the first people to get involved because we're here. We're here because we're interested. And I think that's one of the things we don't pay attention to. We're afraid to speak. You talk about the problem with women, with the abuse and all of this, right? I've raised daughters and nieces, and I have all daughters. And a lot of, I only have one granddaughter. I have a lot of grandsons. But when I watch TV and I see the music videos and I see people going out and I see how women dress, and they're instigating a lot. The same women are the ones who are actually, you know, sort of helping this. No, I know it's not. I know. I know. I'm just saying it's culture. Yeah. Yeah. No, there's culture. No, I'm just saying there's culture. There's culture, lifestyle. No, culture and lifestyle. No. All right. I'm making my point. I'm making my point. I am making my point because. Okay.
And I think it's important for us to say that we have to move beyond that. There's a woman who are to
That's the point I am trying to make. I'm trying to say that we need to move and educate. And one of the things we mentioned is school. I think one of the places to really start is the young lady talked about, and that was the one point I want to make, is maybe a social course in school about society. What's affecting our society, social programs that's affecting our society, if we could teach that in school. They're all learning math and English and everything else, but maybe our social issues, maybe a program for social issues might be able to help our young girls, our young boys to change, because we're not going to do it now, but we could do it slowly with our younger generation. That's the point I'm trying to.
Well, we will add that to the thing. Do you want to respond to that?
Good day, everyone. My name is Vidyard Kasoon. I attended late, and I know that I disrupted. There are times, unfortunately, disruption is sometimes what we have to do when we deal with gender-based violence. We hear, I think just now we were talking, I think Malcolm was talking about this thing about the road, about men harassing women. And I've had chances to go up to men, you know, say, here the man left the little girl alone. Leave their children in school uniform. It isn't about how women dress, right? It's nothing to do with how women and girls dress, right? It's nothing. It has nothing to do with how women and girls dress. I think women need to understand that girl, we talked about a 10-year-old girl who was raped in her home. I heard somebody saying something about how the girl she must learn to dress modestly because she's going to seduce her brothers. That is nonsense. That is nonsense. All kinds of women are assaulted regardless of how they are dressed. We have said that girls and women are assaulted regardless of how they are dressed. They're assaulted in their homes. They're assaulted by husbands. Right? So we need to get that conversation out a little bit. And I mean, I appreciate that this is supposed to be a national conversation. But I get a little emotional because I felt that we can't be going back. That was 20 years ago when Danuta started a discussion about domestic violence. We had to lay some ground rules about understanding that women are not to blame for the violence there. None of us. It's like if a thief come in your house and beat you up and you start blaming yourself, thinking you did something to attract it. No, it's the fault of the abuser. Right? So let us just get that in our heads, please. Right? If we're going to carry on this conversation, let's have some ground rules. I hope that we can have some. I mean, there's a wonderful SWOT analysis. There's data there. There's excellent research there, which is showing how bad the problem is. But if you're going to be focusing on solutions, Danuta talked about the rape myths, and one of the underlying myths which is perpetuated is that because the women dress or the girls dress the way they do, they are seducing us poor men. And many men don't rape. I don't know how many of the men in here rape or are enticed to rape by anybody. Because I usually say to the men, I can look at you now, and if I think I see how nice you look in your jeans, and so you want I come and rape you now? I like jeans, or I like the man in red shirt. I want to rip the red shirt off the man. Right? Well, that's yeah, right. But the point is that this is we need to move. We need to move beyond that blaming of the victim and understand that we have a role to play in changing. I think that was Danuta's point. We have a role to play in in dealing with gender relations. And as I said, because sometimes you go down the road and you hear, I got a construction site going on over the road. 1 or 2 times you got to look at that man in the face and ask him what's going on. And as people are saying, everyone is noticing, it's younger and younger children. The children are in school clothes and not the sexy clothes. It's school clothes at them. Nurses in uniform. People going to church.
The granny.
Right? The elderly women are being, right. So there's no immunity regardless of whether you're covered in, whatever you are. Right? I know one man tell me the only reason that he might be scared of a woman in a hijab is that because of the media thing about terrorism, is that he feels that she might blow him up. Right? So that is the only thing that goes on with that. So I just, and I'm sorry that I'm late, but it's just a little emotional because, at midday, and I thought we moved the conversation. A little frightened that we didn't move the conversation. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Vidya. It's not so much moving. We do want to give everybody an opportunity to say what they want to say. We're not debating, but I wanted you to make that point because that is precisely what we in the Caribbean Voice think. And I'm pretty sure almost all the NGOs think that. Women should not be blamed, and however they dress, they're free to express themselves through their dress. That should not be given as the reason for them being raped. The reason has to do with the rapist, not the victim. And we have to move, as Vidya said so forcibly, beyond blaming the victim. Culture or no culture, we've got to deculturalize. We've got to deconstruct that culture that says that if you dress in a certain way, you're asking me to rape you. If that is a culture that says that, we've got to deconstruct that because that is a myth that has been perpetuated for too long. And like Vidya, I am very passionate about that. I've got nieces. I've got sisters. I'm a teacher. I've been teaching for 30 years. I teach young kids. I teach teenagers. I teach late teenagers. I have been in situations where I've seen how they behave. I've been in situations where I've had to talk to them. They've confided in me. I have to counsel them. I have had to go to other people with more expertise to do it. More often than not, invariably in every situation, if they're having issues, you have to help them. You can't take advantage of them. In New York City and in the United States, and even here in Guyana, we read the other day, and this is another pet peeve of mine, but I'm not going to go much into it. People taking their girl children to pandits because, well, they still feel that pandits are medical doctors for whatever reason, I don't know. And the next thing you know is the pandit ending up raping the girl children. It has happened too often. It continues to happen. You know? There was a youth story in the media in Guyana the other day. These kind of things have got to stop. We cannot make culture this homogeneous thing that justifies these kind of acts. If they were part of whatever culture, we need to take them out. I'm a Hindu. I don't regard that. I don't regard those kind of things as part of my Hindu culture. We've got to take them out. Yes.
All right. Please allow Alex. Good afternoon. My name is Azopai Lewis from the Guyana Teachers Union. I have listened attentively and I've made a few jottings. I want to echo what Ms. Nia Sabana said earlier. I must compliment him for his presentation. The chair of the session said you must not go back, but all my points were taken from persons because my hand was up before. And I just want to say to the panelists that I do agree with what the university professor said, that in everything we do, we must have a plan. And one of the things that the Guyana Teachers Union is looking forward with this group is to ensure that we have a collaborative network. Now, I've listened to the speaker who said about HIV and AIDS. I want to say to him that the Guyana Teachers Union have a networking program with HIV and awareness. And we have trained our teachers, and it's a continuous program, how to deal with children with HIV and AIDS, even to the parents. My other concerns are, I have heard persons presenting and they have said that education is failing and teachers, what is happening in the education system. I want to say to you that the Guyana Teachers Union met with the ministry monthly and we have recognized the issues that are faced with our students and pupils. I say students because secondary deals with students and primary deals with pupils. And most of these issues occurred in our secondary, our primary, grade 6, going into the secondary. And we have negotiated for our teachers who are trained in sociology, social worker, to be more involved in, instead of teaching, let them be at the schools to deal with issues, because the issues are evident in our system and they need to be we need to look at it, and so we are bargaining with our new minister. It was there with the previous government, and so we will continue to bargain because every day in schools we have lots of issues to deal with. And it takes time, it takes away our management from schools as teachers and even principals, I should say. Now, my recommendations to the Caribbean Voice is that you're having the voice, the chair of this proceeding said, networking with other group, fine, but a strategic plan must be developed. Where we are going and how we will achieve what we have to do. The issues are evident in our country. And research, I do believe in a comparative research, and so we can be able to identify the issues, how we can deal with suicide, how we can prevent drug abuse, and if we have this large group with everybody joined together, we can come together and do a comparative research and file our recommendations and the way forward to deal with the issues. And thirdly, supportive groups in our communities. Social media have educational programs. We can have panelists on the media talking about our adolescents, about teenage pregnancy, drug abuse, even to our parents, educate our parents, because all the core issues starts from the home. Thank you very much.
Pleasant good afternoon. I am Amelita Abrams, social worker by profession and practice. like my friend Trevor. I just want to make mention to the young lady was talking about the school and education. I was a part of the in youth school program that was initially to target teenagers in school. The previous administrator had pulled that program from the school. It was an upgrade to your social studies program. So we go into school, we were doing life skill and training to our youth. And the previous administrator said that we cannot teach teenagers about sex and condoms, only abstinence. So the program was pulled. It was funded by the Global Fund Committee. It was never a government institution, organization that was funded that program. I was one of the members that went into schools to talk to youth about HIV, STI, condom use. And the government pulled that program because we were not allowed to talk to teenagers about sex. I just stepped out earlier for an hour to do a facilitation session on STI and HIV to 25 young men aged 12 to 17. I just stepped out and came back. And of course, we cannot talk about condom use, only about abstinence to those youth. Surprisingly, as soon as the topic came up, the guys had their condoms waiting for me to do condom demonstration for them. So at two, I went to a school up the East Coast, and there were 6 teenage pregnant girls in that school. Yet still, I was not allowed to talk about condom use in school. We're only promoting abstinence in school. So they had the in-school youth program that was pulled by the previous administration because we went into the school and we're talking about sex and condoms, and they only want us to talk about abstinence.
All right, I'm going to ask you the same question I've asked a couple of other people. Can we count on you to be part of the movement that goes forward? Absolutely. Good. Thank you very much. GTU has been one of the organizations that we reached out to from the very beginning, and there's always been that um, uh, common need and agreement that we're going to collaborate. We will be having a meeting with you guys before we leave, before Norca and I go back to New York. So we'll work on some of those things.
Good morning. Collis Nicholson, representing Guyana Teachers Union. Sorry, good afternoon. I find it difficult, or may I say first, before I say that in all our approach, I'm listening to all the speakers here, morning into afternoon, is that we do not have a common ground when it comes to social cohesion. I find it very difficult that we keep going back and forth, and we are not coming to a place where would benefit, as my sister on the other side says, that would speak to the core of the issue. As a society, as a multi-ethnic society, we need to move away from the behavior of what affects one particular group as against the other, and look at it, as was said, as a Guyanese thing. And I find it very difficult to believe and to understand, from a teacher's point of view, that having to go into schools, head teachers are not going to want to talk, for you to talk about teenage pregnancy with the aspect of omitting using a condom. Because all that we're doing is that we're pushing the children away from the actual reality of life. When you preach abstinence, what is left behind, or what is left for them to do after abstinence? Teenagers like to experience things. And therefore, you tell me, at my teenage age, abstinence I would not even listen to you because listening takes on a different approach altogether. It will come through here, pass through here, and I will go do my experience. So we need, as a unified body, we need to listen and listen extensively. We need to communicate with validation. And we need to move away from an individualized approach and come up to a unified approach that speaks of social cohesion for all of us.
To what was said in terms of sex education in school, I think it's very, very important. I work with youth, as I've said, and I have been trained in psychology and counseling as well. One of the problems that I face, I'm not old, but when I was in school, um, we were just told one side of the coin in terms of condom use. So it was very out there. You know, use condoms. This is an alternative, whatever, whatever. But apart from the other youth organizations that I was involved in, we were not given a holistic approach to, okay, so this is available to you, you can use a condom, but you have to consider things like the age of consent, one. Two, you also have to consider things like the risk factors that are involved when young girls and boys start to engage in sexual activity and all of that. There are other things that you obviously have to consider. So I'm just saying that in talking to the ministries about the way we present information, we have to encourage not just moving away from an individualized, or we can't see it just as that, because obviously there are certain pockets of people that will promote abstinence, right? But it's not just about that. We want to show our young people these are the options available to you. These are the consequences for each particular type of choice. And so make your choices wisely. That's what we need to empower our young people to do. Building resilience in youth is very, very important. Secondly, I'm speaking also as a youth who is interested in, I take my national pledge very seriously. I have, like any other Guyanese, I have opportunities that are available to me, and several of us have been outside of Guyana and have been giving in those places and continue to come back because we have a passion for our country. I studied outside of Guyana and I came back because I have a passion for my country. But I would like to beg that when you go to the ministers, you say to them that there are young people who want to work, who want to do things, but they need to study and they need the government of Guyana to invest in that studying being done. For example, I have been accepted to several universities outside of Guyana to study mental health and psychological therapies. When I have applied for every scholarship under the sun in Guyana. When you apply for these scholarships, you are told, we don't have enough funding, it's a very competitive process, and so on and so forth. Yet you say to me, this is priority for us. Mental health is listed as one of the 7 priorities of the Ministry of Health and Public Health. And yet you don't give priority to persons who want to actually study in these things. The lady who was here earlier who talked about how she has been educated in the United States and all that, she came back, thankfully. But why should I, as a young person, I mean, I'm not married yet, why should I come back if my country is not even willing to invest in me so that I can invest in my country? You understand? So what I'm saying is, I'm calling for, on behalf of youth everywhere in Guyana, I am calling for us to invest, put our money where our mouth is, invest in the education of our people, because we can